Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nico, the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we are going to be looking at the 2022 NFL quarterback class. Now, obviously, not all these guys are going to come out of college and go to the NFL immediately. There's obviously a chance that some of them want to stay at college and continue to play for maybe another year or two before they decide to go to the NFL. But a lot of these guys, the main guys, are going to make that move, in my opinion, to join the 2022 NFL quarterback class. If you do at any point inside this video end up enjoying, you want more football content, I talk NFL and be talking college football, NFL draft, all this stuff. So I hope that you guys do end up enjoying this video and want to hit that subscribe button. Again, it's free. I put out content pretty much every single day to help you guys out so you guys can have a great time. I also make a lot of fantasy football content if you guys are into that. So we will begin with quarterback Spencer Rattler, quarterback out of Oklahoma. Now, a lot of you guys probably know him from Quarterback One, the Netflix show. That's how I was first introduced into the life of Spencer Rattler. Now, Spencer Rattler, in my opinion, kind of seems like the quarterback that has the most potential out of any of these guys. He seems like he does a lot of things right, but he also seems like he kind of has that trait of being kind of a dick at times. Now, after going and being on Quarterback One, he took his talents all the way to Oklahoma, and at least as of recently, Oklahoma's been a complete and utter powerhouse at creating NFL-ready quarterbacks. Since 2015, every single starting quarterback has made their way into the NFL and has been a relatively high pick. Baker Mayfield being the first out of that group in 2018, going number one overall to the Cleveland Browns. The next year, in 2019, his buddy Kyler Murray was selected number one to the Arizona Cardinals. Next up was Jalen Hurts, who got selected to the Philadelphia Eagles in the 2020 NFL Draft. Sure, he wasn't a first-round pick, but he is a starter now on that team. At least that's what we would assume, considering they benched him in the final week of the season. With that said, it should be no surprise at all that Spencer Rattler, coming out of a team that is just churning out these NFL-level quarterbacks, that he would potentially be a guy that is going to go in the first round, if not the highest pick out of all of these quarterbacks. In 2020, Rattler put up 3,031 passing yards, being 10th ranked in all of college football on 214 completions and 317 attempts, which resulted in a strong 28 passing touchdowns, 8th in college football to just 7 INTs, 85th in college football, with an impressive completion percentage of 67.5%. While Rattler is definitely not Lamar Jackson, and he's not even Kyler Murray when it comes to running the football, he does like to go ahead and get a little bit loose, rushing the ball 81 times in 2020 for 160 rushing yards and 6 passing touchdowns. Under Mr. Lincoln Riley, their head coach, I can assume that Rattler's going to take that next step up in 2021 to really become and solidify himself as the quarterback one, just like the show he was on in this draft class. Now, right now, there's debate between who the number one guy is in this class, and maybe you guys want to let me know down below who you prefer out of these guys that we're going to be talking about in this video. He is right now, according to Vegas, the favorite to win the 2021 Heisman. So Vegas is predicting that this guy is going to have a big year, and I can definitely see that happening. So Spencer Rattler right now would be the quarterback one, at least for me. At number 2, we have a very close competitor to Spencer Rattler in Sam Howell, quarterback of UNC. Now, the Tar Heels are definitely a team that most people look at as a college basketball school. Why is that? Because they're always in March Madness, and they always go pretty decently far. But as of recently, UNC has produced NFL legend, Kissin' Titties, Mitchell Trubisky, and I think that Sam Howell could also be a top pick, just like Mitch Trubisky, but hopefully not over a guy like Patrick Mahomes, like Mitchell Trubisky was selected over in the draft, which you hate to see if you're a Bears fan. This 6'1" sophomore was born in North Carolina, so that's, I guess, why he went to UNC. Unlike with Rattler, though, Howell did end up starting his freshman season, putting up 3,641 passing yards on 422 attempts for 259 completions, throwing 38 tugs and 7 INTs for a 61.4% completion percentage, as well as running the rock 94 times for 35 yards and 1 total touchdown. So this guy is definitely just like with Rattler, not going to be Lamar Jackson-esque type of running, not going to be that guy who just takes the ball and runs with it, but is a competent rusher, in my opinion. His 2020 season, while throwing for less yards and touchdowns, shows a far more accurate passer in Sam Howell, going for 64.1 completion percentage to a 68.1% on 348 attempts with 237 completions. This led to 3,587 passing yards, fourth in the NCAA with 30 touchdowns, sixth in the NCAA, and 7 INTs, tied for 85th. He also rushed the ball for 146 yards on 92 rushes for 5 touchdowns. So again, just like with Spencer Rattler, this is going to be a guy that has potentially number 1 pick potential in the NFL draft. A lot of people right now have Howell ranked ahead of Spencer Rattler, and I will not argue with them at all. I think both of these guys are tremendous talents, and I think actually the safer pick would probably be Sam Howell, as it seems like Rattler is still a little bit immature, at least in my opinion. Next guy up here, we got Kedon Slovis, quarterback of the USC Trojans. Slovis took the job his freshman year following an injury to Mr. JT Daniels. JT ducked and weaved and dipped and dodged and ducked his way straight to Georgia and became the starter eventually. We're going to be talking about him a little bit later. So now the job is Mr. Slovis's. Taking over from Daniels in 2019, Slovis showed excellent potential, throwing the rock for 3,502 passing yards on 392 attempts for 282 completions with a stout completion percentage of 71.9%, throwing 30 tugs and just 9 INTs. In 2020, he took over as the starter, but this year, in these COVID type of years, Slovis didn't play a lot of games at all. He only played 6 games, put up 17 passing touchdowns and 7 INTs. Not super impressive, right? But again, that's only in 6 games. The other year, he was playing slightly more games, and you got to understand that this was just a overall weird season to kind of try and grade these guys, especially on these teams that weren't playing a whole lot of games. He put up 17 passing touchdowns again in 2020 with just 7 INTs. He threw for 1,921 yards on 264 attempts for a 67% completion percentage. His arm accuracy does look very strong from what I have seen from Mr. Slovis, but he does lack that rushing ability that Howell as well as Mr. Rattler seem to have at this point. Slovis to me seems more like a Rodgers type, a guy who's not going to really be taken off, a guy like Matt Ryan. Obviously that could be added to his game, but based on what I've seen from Slovis in his first 2 years in college at USC, it does not seem like he's going to really be developing into some type of rushing quarterback. Next quarterback up here, this is where it starts getting a little bit dicey, right? These first 3 guys, in my opinion, are going to be first-round picks and have the potential to all be the number 1 pick if one of these guys really shows out in 2021 in college and just really starts balling out. So the next guy up here is JT Daniels, quarterback of the Georgia Bulldogs. Obviously started his college career in USC, and then he dipped, dodged, ducked, and weaved his way all the way to Georgia in 2020. He started the season on the bench, but got his first start up against the Mississippi State Bulldogs in a game where he threw for 401 passing yards and 4 total touchdowns with 0 INTs. Just like with Slovis, this guy is not really a guy who's going to be looking to duck and run his way, maybe away from the USC team, but not to run away from the defenders. He's much more of a pocket passer, had 80 completions in 2020 out of 119 passing attempts for a 67.2 completion percentage, putting up 1,231 passing yards and 10 touchdowns with just 2 INTs. Right now, I'm definitely not looking as Mr. JT Daniels as one of those first-round draft picks. But it's really because his resume is not very long. He didn't really do much at USC, hasn't done much yet at Georgia, and it may be a smart move for JT Daniels to not even come out in 2022 and wait again till 2023 to come out to potentially upgrade his potential of being a first-round draft pick. But if his talent continues at Georgia and he continues to look good and Georgia bounces back in 2021, we could see JT Daniels potentially become a number 1 pick, not the number 1 pick, but a number 1 round pick in the 2022 NFL draft. Next guy up here, we got Tyler Shough. Now, his name is pronounced his name looks like Tyler Shough, but apparently, based on what I've been looking at and how the announcers say it, his name is actually Shough, like your when you're real angry and you don't want to be cursing, you know what I'm saying? When you're like, oh, shucks, instead of being like, oh, fuck, I dropped something, oh, shucks. You've definitely heard that before. So Shough took over from the NFL phenom Justin Herbert in 2020, throwing the rock 167 times to complete 106 passes with a 63.5 completion ratio and 1,559 yards with 13 TDs and 6 INTs. He also rushed the ball 66 times for 271 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Shough showed up in some big games this season, but there was also some big games where it seemed like this guy would be able to elevate his game to the tippity top and become that guy. He just kind of shrugged it off like Jordan. Didn't play too well. His biggest game was up against WSU, the team that Mr. Gardner Minshew came from. He put up 312 passing yards on 30 attempts for 4 passing touchdowns and 1 INT. In his other game that was very close against Oregon State, he did not step up to the occasion, going 20 of 31 for 285 passing yards and just 2 passing touchdowns with 2 INTs. This Oregon sophomore, to me, is going to have to show a lot more in his junior season in order to become that guy to sniff being one of those top draft picks like the predecessors of Oregon, Mariota, as well as Justin Herbert had became. And final quarterback here is Grayson McCall, quarterback of the Coastal Carolina. There's obviously going to be a longer list of guys that are going to be coming out, but to me, this is the main list of players. We also have Tua Tagovailoa's brother, Tulia Tagovailoa, out of Maryland. I'm not going to be talking about him here, but maybe he ends up coming out in 2022. Grayson McCall, quarterback of the Coastal Carolina. Now, a lot of gamblers probably know who Mr. Grayson McCall is, strictly based upon their nice record against the spread this season and how electric they really look this season. But those who cannot, or who are really not the gamblers, you're not about throwing a couple hundos at Coastal Carolina, they're maybe not know as much about Mr. Grayson McCall, considering Coastal Carolina is not a real big school. But you can definitely see some upside in the 6'3" freshman, real tall boy over there in Coastal Carolina. His first year in 2019, he went 4 for 4 like at Wendy's for 25 yards and a touchdown. Didn't really play all that much. In 2020 is when he really became the leader of this Coastal Carolina offense, throwing 2,488 passing yards on 250 attempts for 172 completions. He also threw for 2,388 yards, 19th in college football, 26 touchdowns, tied for 10th, and only had 3 INTs, tied for 21st, winning all of his games besides their bowl game up against Liberty, which was by far his worst game. He even slayed BYU and potential top 2 draft pick in Zach Wilson in that game. Very good game out of Mr. Grayson McCall. He also put up 569 rushing yards on 111 carries and 7 touchdowns. So he may actually be the guy out of all these guys that has the potential to really burst onto the scene as a very strong rushing quarterback in 2022. Very impressive as a player, and I believe that he is going to be getting a lot more media coverage in 2022, which could potentially elevate him into being that first-round talent. So let me know which of these quarterbacks you guys like the best, and let me know what you guys think. If I missed out on any of these players, we could have a nice conversation about them down below in the comment section. I really appreciate you guys checking out this video, and if you really could and ended up enjoying, please make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. I love each and every single one of you guys. Please make sure you have a great rest of your guys' day, and I'll see you beautiful bastards in a video tomorrow. I love you all as always. Good boy!